Hi, this is Dave Moorman. I'm going to give it another minute or two and we'll go ahead and get started. Check. Hey, hope everybody's having a good day. We're going to go ahead and get started. 2:01, I'll give everybody a minute to catch up. Let's see here. Today we're going to be talking about protecting your business from today's cybersecurity threats. My name is David Moorman, President of DynaSis Integrated Systems Corporation. For those of you joining us for the first time, Business Tech Talks is a webinar series sponsored by a group of nationally recognized managed service providers. All of our members provide comprehensive network management and IT support solutions in different regions across the U.S. Our goal is to further educate business executives, decision makers, and IT professionals about key topics related to technology, share our industry knowledge and best practices, and promote business innovation, growth, and success. At any time during this webinar, feel free to submit your questions. I've got some time at the end of the presentation to circle back and answer those for you. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. So again, my name is David Moorman. I'm the president and founder of DynaSis. We're a 25-year-old IT services and cloud computing company in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm awesome at the end of the day. I swear it. We've been around 25 years, like I said. We have 55 employees, including 30 engineers, and do a lot of IT infrastructure, security, managed services, and cloud computing. So we're pretty skilled in this area. So today we're going to talk about cybersecurity. This is a presentation I put together a few months back. It's pretty extensive, so I'm going to kind of keep some velocity to the conversation and keep it moving. But as everybody knows, the threat landscape has changed. Security now is headline news. We're seeing everything every day, on CNN, on NBC, on different attacks that are occurring. And a lot of these attacks in the last 2 years are starting to happen to smaller and smaller businesses. And there's reasons why, and we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to talk about different things and tactics that you can use if you're not a DynaSis customer to safeguard yourself against these attacks. Everybody in the consortium is doing about 90%, if not 100% of what we're doing, so everybody should be in good shape if you're a client of one of the consortium companies. So what's happened? In the last 20 years, 10, 15 years ago, all you had to do was buy a box. Basically buy a firewall and that got you protected. But then The users left the building. And the way we work has changed, and exposing your business to new risks. So now with all cloud-based applications, software as a service-based applications, mobile users, Wi-Fi, and then bring your own device, which can be a nightmare unto its own. This has kind of changed the way security is being delivered today. To add to that, insert shadow IT. So shadow IT is when your users decide to go use Dropbox and set that up on their own without asking, C-level executives and getting approval. It's setting up wireless access points in their office that are plugged into the wall on your network you don't know about. And this is happening at an alarming rate. We see it all the time within our customer base. But basically, 70% of employees are using mobile devices, and 1 in 5 use cloud applications, and this has kind of compounded the problem. And then antivirus software finds malware after an infection. It's basically a signature-based product, and I'll talk a little bit about the reasons why that's happening. But at that point, it's too late. So the evolution of cybercrime has really come a long way. In the old days, this was literally 4, 5, 6 years ago, you had financed hacker organizations, typically out of Eastern Europe or Asia. They were centralized. They built infrastructure and everything from scratch. They owned the physical servers. It was very expensive, and therefore they went after large targets. But today, there's a new cybercrime ecosystem. This is distributed. They can buy or host virtual machines anywhere in the world. Think Rackspace, Amazon, or Microsoft Azure. They specialize in different areas. It's cheap to do, so therefore they're starting to go after smaller targets. So why is this happening? What changes are going on that's making this happening? Well, like I just discussed, being able to go to Rackspace and spin up a VM is easy. You steal a credit card, you spin up a VM at Rackspace or Microsoft Azure, and then you can launch your attacks from there. As soon as you're done, you can spin that server down, close the account, and move on. So it's really hard to pinpoint these distributed attacks. So basically, it's created this industry called cybercrime as a service. This is something new that's happened in the last pretty much 2.5 years in the industry, and we're seeing it expound at a massive rate. So the reason why is there's actually marketplaces that are set up where people will actually contract out hackers to do jobs for them. So think of marketplace as something like Craigslist. So you can go to a marketplace like Silk Road, you can post a job posting, and then you can pay any of these hackers with virtual money, which is pretty much untrackable at this point. So small businesses and medium-sized companies are now in the crosshairs. You can see the chart on the left. The percentage of attacks have gone up year by year towards SMBs. And where in the old days it used to be companies with 100+ employees or 1,000+ employees, it's now basically, with employees from 10 to 100 users are 15 times more likely to be attacked. So the first stage of attack is called the infection phase or infect phase. And we remember all these emails, which I still get them, which is crazy. So there's people that haven't caught up yet. But 5 to 10 years ago, you got an email from the African prince, and we all kind of laughed that out, laughed that off. Today, these kind of attacks have gotten a lot more sophisticated, where they're masking other companies, to where if you use FedEx every day, it's a lot easier for you to accidentally click on a file or an attachment or on a link to a website because you do that every day. And they've been trying to, kind of mask themselves using Fortune 500 companies that we use on every day. This is an example of an email I actually got a few months back. I thought it would be good to put it into this presentation, but we deal with Dell Direct every day. So I get constantly emails or CC'd on emails from Dell. So I thought this was interesting that somebody targeted the president of an IT services firm with pretty much a Dell spoofed email. The only reason I knew it wasn't legit is, 1, I don't work in purchasing, but 2, is the date was in a European format. So when I looked at it, I noticed it right away. But I just thought it was interesting that the bad actors or cyber criminals are going to, a much more greater or sophisticated way to attack users. So then the other thing is malvertising is on the rise. So what is malvertising? Malvertising is advertising on websites that are not legitimate, but that yet the ads are linked to infectious sites. So the first thing they do is they set up a website with an exploit kit. You run an ad on Google AdWords or Yahoo or Bing, and you use somebody else's copy, which I'll show you an example of what we've seen. And then once somebody clicks on that, it redirects them to an exploit kit site where they'll get infected. And that's how a lot of these are being transmitted these days. So here's an example where somebody actually copied a Bing ad, which is a totally legitimate ad. But if you click on that ad, it will take you to a spoofed Bing site, which will then download the infection onto your computer or your user's computer at your company. So these exploit kits are really cheap. You can get them as much as, for $200. There's many different ones out on the market like Archie or Bleeding Life, FlashPack. And these are real easy to use. I mean, pretty much anybody in my organization or most anybody's organization could use these. A lot of it's software as a service based now, so it's similar to using something like Facebook. Here's an example of one called Black Hole. This is one where you can actually, put in a credit card. It'll send out exploits and show you what OS platform you get the most hits on and the most infections on. It'll show you what exploits are having the most success, which browsers are having the most success. And if you look at the top, they'll actually give you in-app purchase upgrades. So as this is going on, they'll come out with a new version, a much better version, that will actually do more encryption and charge you a small fee to upgrade. So the intermediate step is what's called dropper malware. So dropper malware is becoming more common in the last 2 to 3 years. And basically a bad actor gets a piece of malware on the computer. The user's, that malware on their computer sits there quietly and just phones home. It doesn't do any kind of screen pop-ups or crazy advertising or the things we've used to see. It actually just sits there quietly, and then they sell that capability to people in different marketplaces. Once they sell that capability, then that user, whoever buys that capability, let's say 10,000 computers that were exploited, then they can decide to do what they want with it, and they'll install their main payload. So that could be ransomware, it could be a keylogger, it could be a spam bot, really whatever kind of attack they want to affect their the 10,000 per se desktops that they bought. They can decide to do whatever they want at that point. And then basically if that contract ends, so they contract this out like subscription, then they can go ahead and buy more capacity or extend that contract and buy more seats. So then there's the malware payload. So this is an example of one keylogger called SpyEye. That's a few years old now. But basically anybody can use this tool. They can say, give me Bank of America credit card numbers, give me Visa credit card numbers, and these would be installed malware on, say, everybody's computers. And I can even click down on the box in the bottom left-hand corner and say, just give me credit cards with a CVV security number only. So it's gotten pretty sophisticated. This is an example, and I use this one because it's one of the only instances where somebody got caught actually doing it, and it was this guy out of Russia, and basically he sold exploits and was caught. And I use this because this is some of the only data that we currently have when it comes to people that run these exploit tools. So SpyEye was the name of it at the time, and basically he was able to sell this over and over and over again between $1,800 and $8,500 a shot, and he sold it to about 150 customers and made a reported $3.2 million. But I use this as an example only because this is one instance where we were able to see that somebody got caught and we had data on the events that happened. So these are some of the attacks that are currently in the media that have happened in the last couple of years. And I show this because this isn't like, a few months back I saw the Sony attack on 60 Minutes. These are attacks are in big dollars to me anyway. You know, Delray Beach Public Library to $160,000 stolen. You know, Crystal Lake Elementary School, District 47, $350,000 stolen. These aren't going to make CNN or 60 Minutes national news, but these are going on every day in the U.S. and worldwide. But this is just the beginning. What about downtime and data theft? So what we've been seeing is most of the attacks in the last 18 months have been due to ransomware, and there's different variants of it, but also I'll just use ransomware or crypto locker as the first I guess malicious code that came out. But there's different variances, and there's 50 different names at this point. But this is what we're seeing the most of today because it's the most successful. So basically, what they're doing with the crypto type viruses is infecting the machine via email, an exploit kit, malvertising, or a dropper. That machine then phones home, and they get the control server, and they get an encryption key. Then basically that encryption key, if allowed, will go out and encrypt all the data on the company's servers. So one example, we have a big engineering firm down in the perimeter in Atlanta, and about a year and a half ago, they got crypto, a version of it. And the bad thing is we didn't catch it quick enough, and it encrypted about 10 terabytes of data. Well, in the old days, if you had a gig or two encrypted, you could probably restore that pretty quick, but it literally took us a week to restore fully the 10 terabytes of data. So now data has what I call gravity to it. We've put a lot of things in place in the last 18 months to combat most of these things, but somebody that doesn't have the protection like that we provide or one of the managed service providers in this consortium, this would be a huge problem if you had that much data encrypted, and some of you might have experienced this already. So then once it encrypts all the data, then it basically contacts you, and you have to go buy bitcoins and put in the encryption key to get your data back. So why aren't signature-based security tools working? It's because signature-based tools they look at file signatures, and that's how they're able to protect you from, at the firewall gateway level, which we still recommend, or at the antivirus or malware on the desktop. But they're looking at basically file signatures, and what these cyber criminals have come up with in the last couple of years, they've figured out that the tools got smarter, so therefore they had to outsmart the tools. We're always trying to, they're always trying to stay a step ahead. So they use something called a krypter. Basically what a krypter is a tool that you can buy. You take your malware, you upload it to this krypter tool here, this one called Aegis Krypter 5.4, and basically you'll add in a bunch of junk code, white space into your file to change the overall signature of that file so the AV software and the gateway firewall antivirus software can't pick it up. And what they do is once they've installed this code, junk code, and white space into those files to change the signature enough to where your antivirus can't pick it up, they then have the ability to run it against all the most popular antivirus products in the marketplace. So they'll run it against Norton Antivirus or AVG, and basically if it doesn't pass and Kaspersky picks it up, they'll just inject more white code or more junk code into that file until the antivirus signature-based tools do not pick it up anymore, and then they'll send out the exploit. So you can buy crypter packages pretty cheap. For $74.90, you can get a 6-month version, or I recommend the Elite Pack for $149.90, where you get unlimited tech support. That's usually good for the cyber criminal on the go. So, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, in the old days, large targets like Home Depot, Dairy Queen, Sony were pretty much being attacked. But now with all these current technologies, the cyber criminals have decided to move further down the supply chain to smaller businesses that don't have the security and put the investment into cybercrime. An example of this is the Target attack that most people probably heard of about a year and a half ago. 110 million people were affected. But really what happened there was the cyber criminals were able to successfully launch an exploit on a company called Fazio Mechanical Services. Fazio is a sub 100 employee air conditioning, heating, cooling, and refrigeration company that Target uses. But they had access to Target's, basically their electronic billing system, and where they did all their project management. They were able to, Fazio was running free antivirus software on all their desktops. They were able to exploit somebody's desktop, hop on to the targeted encrypted PHP portal, and basically hack that, and then pivot throughout the network and got on the Active Directory. And basically from there, it's a long story, but they were able to install infectious code on the credit card terminals to capture 110 million credit card numbers from Target customers. But this is an example of where they, the cyber criminals targeted a smaller company, and then by doing that, then saw, hey, look, there's a bigger fish, now we can move upstream. And with our clients in Atlanta, we have a lot of customers. We target small to mid-sized companies, but a good percentage of our customer base is servicing Fortune 500 or enterprise level companies. So the impact of a breach is high. Basically besides data loss, downtime, or business continuity, the damage to the brand and lawsuits, this has become what DynaSis is spending a good amount of our effort, resources, financial resources, and engineering time constantly figuring out ways to stay ahead of these guys. And 60% of firms go out of business within the first 6 months of a data breach. So how do we, gain strength beyond signature-based tools? Well, one of the things we want to do is prevention. So we want to protect users across the full infection chain. We want to block sites that have exploit kits and be able to detect those at the network layer. We want to protect users from phishing attacks. And we want to block malicious links in emails and applications. So the users, even if they did get an email that was infectious, even if they clicked on the link or the executable file, it would go nowhere and do nothing. Then the second thing is containment. So outside of prevention, we want to be able to contain these things if they happen. So we want to prevent these infections from phoning home. We want to block droppers from getting malware. We want to stop any kind of spyware or keyloggers from uploading data, even if they've collected the data. And then we want to prevent ransomware from obtaining an encryption key. Because if they never get the encryption key, then basically the exploit isn't successful. And then if any of these things go on, we want to basically have the security team or your IT services provider be alerted so we can respond in a timely manner. So the way we look at it, the security is basically a layered approach. Think of it like bulletproof glass. So a normal glass on your car or in your house is basically one pane of glass. So if we just looked at trying to tackle this cybercrime problem with just one security product, say a firewall or antivirus software, we'd be unsuccessful. But if we look at it to where it's different layers of security, and we provide multiple layers within the stack, then we can be successful. So if one of these panes of glass breaks down, the second, third, fourth, fifth pane of glass will protect your organization and your users. So I'm going to use this as what we currently offer our customers as part of IT services. But again, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, all the companies, Acropolis, IT Solutions, and Chips, they pretty much, I know off the top of my head, do at least 90–95% of it. If not, some of those guys are probably, they're pretty sophisticated doing all of these things and more. And I can provide these if anybody's interested in a checklist so you can check with them and figure out what's getting done. But the first thing we want to do is educate the users. If anybody's interested, I've created a 4-page security brief that you can email out to your users, and I'd be more than happy to give that out to anybody who would like it. So teaching them what to look for, and this is what one of my security brief document educates them on. So we want to look for certain things. If you get a file that's a PDF of payroll and you're not in the accounting or payroll department, you probably shouldn't click on it, right? The second thing is email security. So we want to use a spam filtering system to clean out or block any known variants or exploits that come into your organization. The third thing is making sure we're doing, weekly patch updates. Workstation servers, the bad actors are constantly figuring out exploits in Microsoft server operating systems, Apple Macintoshes, iOS, and we want to stay ahead and make sure we're getting patches in a routinely or in a consistent way. We want to make sure we have anti-malware software installed across the network, so on the servers, desktops, laptops, across your whole organization. And we also want to be able to monitor that the users don't, deactivate this software or uninstall it. That's one of the things we do for our clients. Then antivirus software. So antivirus software, we don't see as many viruses as we used to, but they're still out there. Most of what we're seeing today is, anti-malware or malware attacks. But we still want to have antivirus software because those infections are still out there. Then we want to make sure that all the ports on the firewall are locked down and only the ones open that are required to be open, and make sure everything's shut down on the firewall, which usually takes an audit if you're a new customer. If you're a current customer, most of this has already been done. And we want to make sure we do have antivirus on the firewall gateway. Again, this is just another layer to protect you in case of a rogue attack. And some of the new firewalls in the last couple of years that we've been selling has a function called geo-IP filtering. So we have clients that, most of their, if not all of their customers are in the US. We could actually block all the IP ranges from Asia or from Cambodia or from these kind of known places where these cyber criminals, launch from. So we've done this for a few customers. It's been very successful. So we can block whole parts of the world if you don't ever expect on getting an email from Vietnam. Then we also deploy something called Cloud Delivered Protective Security. This is a company that we use called OpenDNS. This is basically security across your network and on your desktops and your laptops. This company, we started using them a few years ago, but they were bought about a year ago by Cisco. This is another layer that we provide. Since we've provided this, we've decreased the amount of attacks within our customer base by probably 75%. We also want to remove local admin rights. So most of our customers, some of them let their users install software on their computers. Most of these attacks happen where somebody clicks on an executable, a link, and that user has administrative rights to install software on their computer, and that's exactly what the exploit goes and does. So by removing that, if they did click on an executable or an exploit link, it would basically not allow them to install that infectious code onto their computer. And then using something called Crypto Prevent. I know most everybody in the consortium, I think all of us are using this today. But this basically is looks at the folders that 90% of these exploits install to, and we basically block those folders as managed service providers from these certain type of exploits. And then what we've actually branded our crypto containment system. This is another layer to this security. Basically, we've created some automation with our remote monitoring management tools that looks at, we've actually integrated it with Microsoft FSRM, which is Microsoft's File Server Resource Manager, and it basically monitors all the files that are on your file server, and if any of them go from a standard file format into a encrypted file format, it automatically drops all of your network drive shares, so it contains or limits the infection. And then it also alerts us. And I know I'm pretty sure all of us in the consortium are doing this today. I'd be willing to bet on it. But again, I can provide you a checklist if you wanted to check with everybody. And then the last thing is data backup. So if any of these other layers or layers within the bulletproof glass fail, you want to make sure we have a good backup from last night or lunchtime or 2 hours ago, depending on if you have that capability. That worst case, we can restore data from 4 hours ago would be our recovery point, and we wouldn't lose too much data. So basically, that's the 12 layers that we recommend today. We're constantly doing research and development and figuring out what else we can add to this stack. But this is, some of the recommendations that have been very successful for our customer base. I can tell you 2 years ago, we probably had one customer, maybe two a week, that were to get some level of ransomware, because this was pretty new to the industry. Today, we've probably had one or two customers this year get crypto, and it was a minimal version of it, and it was very much contained. I threw this slide in here. This is basically some of the policies that we would recommend that a modern business would use for security. There's kind of 9 different things that you'd probably want to look for. We actually have developed an IT policy document that includes all of these things, and it's basically a template. We'd be more than happy to share that with anybody who wants it. Just shoot me an email. I'll give you my contact information. I might be able to upload it or email it out to everybody on the GoToMeeting site, but I'll make sure that if anybody wants this, that I get it to them. So I want to go ahead and open this up for any questions. I know I kind of went through that pretty quick. Believe it or not, that was 60 slides, but I wanted to make sure I didn't take up too much of your time. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and shoot them over. Let's see what we got. Alrighty here. I actually have a lot of questions. I'm going to figure out how to start at the top. Okay. Somebody says that they'd like to have the policy documents. I'll make sure I send those out. How do I get a copy of that 4-page document, the security brief I talked about? Let me go ahead and give you my email address. It is dave.moorman, M-O-O-R-M-A-N, @dynasis.com, D-Y-N-A-S-I-S.com. I will, at the end of this presentation, shoot that, my email address out to everybody via email. And if you want any of the things that I talked about, either the security brief, the checklist on the 12 layers, or the IT policy template, I'd be more than happy to shoot that to you. One question I had here was, do these layers make it difficult for your clients' end users? We have not seen a whole lot of issues. Again, when we take away local administrative rights, if an end user wants to install new software, they typically have to put in a ticket and call our help desk. We'll then give them administrative rights or install the software for them and then basically take those rights away. So we haven't seen it to be an issue in our clients' networks. One question is, how do you get the buy-in of the C-suite, or the C-level, or the directors of the company? One way is for them to sit through this presentation. We'll actually have a link to be sent out, but basically sharing examples with them of other companies that have been attacked. Security, business is technology these days, and security is hugely important in the world we live in. If anybody watches just TV or is on the internet or CNN, you're constantly seeing attacks that are happening. But yeah, it's definitely, we have some companies that are like, yep, take away administrative access for all end users, give me the 12 layers, we want to be secure. We actually have other clients that say, hey, we're a marketing firm, we like our employees are millennials, they like to do whatever they want, they brought their own device, so we don't care. It really just depends on, the leadership of your company. But them sitting through a presentation like this, we've done this for C-level executives a few times now, and I'd say 90% of them walk out of it going, hey, help us, what can we do? I hope that answered that question. Let's see, can smartphones, tablets get infected with ransomware? They can, although I will say that it's more rare than laptops, anything running a Windows operating system or an Apple operating system, because even though mobile devices are there's a lot more of them than there used to be. Geez, there's probably more mobile devices than there are desktops anymore. Most of the cyber criminals have not changed their focus off of the desktop and laptop operating systems, which is what we've seen anyway. Let's see, so if the client, one question is, if the client who was attacked 18 months ago was attacked today, what would be different? What would be different is, we probably have about 8 more layers of security than we did 18 months ago. Since cybercrime ransomware has really escalated the last 18 months. But the other thing is the CSC technology that we've brought to the table. Even if they were to get the infection, it would basically drop all their network shares, contain the file, and instead of 5 or 10 terabytes being encrypted, they would basically have 500 megabytes or a gigabyte encrypted, and we'd be able to restore that off backup within 30 minutes. So they'd have less downtime. We'd be alerted immediately as it happened, and it would contain it, the outbreak. One question is, what do you do to control employee-owned devices? That's a tough one. If, in my opinion, I know BYOD is really big in the marketplace today. In my opinion, as an owner of an IT company, at one point I was a CIO at Florida Power and Light. I'm against BYOD because if they bring their own device, I can't dictate to them the security policies that we've put in place. So I would say if anybody had their own device and wanted to attach to the corporate network and get corporate data, they would basically have to institute or install the agents of all these technologies in the 12-layer stack that we talked about. I think that's all the questions I had. Let me see if there's anything else. Again, I will send out after I get off the line my email address. Anybody who wants any of those documents, I'll list out the 3 of them in the email, and anybody who wants any of those, any of that collateral, I'd be more than happy to share that. Also, I'd be more than happy to share this slide deck. I'll put that in there as a 4th item if you want it. Just tell me I want 1, 3, 1, 3, and 4, and I'll get that out to you later this afternoon. Appreciate everybody's time. Let me see what else I have here. One final note, keep an eye out for the next webinar announcement, which will be held on Wednesday, September 21st. And that's all we have today. I hope you enjoyed the session, and thank you to everybody for taking time out of your day to join us. Have a good day. Bye-bye.